Welcome to One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm your host, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Pernell, your host, your guide, and your coach on this journey. Today, I have with me someone who's really special. I've known her for the past, I don't know how many years, and every time I talk with her, I feel better. I feel like I'm enriched, and she's this amazing woman that I wanted to bring to you. This is Heather Mulligan. She is the president and CEO of the Business Council of New York State, and she acts as the public voice for business interests. She lobbies for pro-growth policies. She looks at areas for relief for New York State businesses. She is quite a force. And over the past few years of her leadership, she's demonstrated strategic thinking. She's an amazing leader. And to be in this role, she has proven that she thrives in complex systems. You really would have to have all of that combination in order to be the president and CEO of the Business Council of New York State. Heather Mulligan, welcome to One Sharp Sword. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me, and it's always strange to hear someone else describe you or me.
Right.
But
Yeah.
so, and I will say, like a personality trait of mine is I'm extraordinarily uncomfortable. Like all the time, I always feel like I should crack a joke or something afterwards, because it makes me sound like too serious a person.
Self-deprecation. You could own it. It's like, yeah, like you could own, yeah, that's me. That's me. I'm wonderful, right? So, and you are wonderful. It's why I asked you here. So, in your role of wonderfulness, right? I mean, every day is really serious for you. Every day
Yeah,
it's kind of like I wouldn't want that job. I just wouldn't, right? So,
I initially didn't. So Um, I
yeah.
mean, I first, just so people understand what it is that we do, and we are the state chamber of commerce, and that meaning not part of the state. We're the trade association representing business in the state, and we're also the state manufacturing association. So my members are every industry pretty much you can think of that exists in New York. The one thing that they all have in common is that they are employers. And so we have
Are we
utility
allowed to
companies.
are we allowed to name some of the big ones?
Um, I mean, sure, I think so. It's public information, so
Right? So in my conversations at some of the gatherings that we've had, the soirees, that I've met with leaders at Blue Cross Blue Shield. I've met with Adobe. I've met with Google.
yeah,
I know that we're doing another gathering at Amazon. Like these are not like the reason I'm bringing this up is because when you say it's sort of like the Chamber of Commerce, it is, but it isn't. It's like these are the superstars of the state of New York. They are what make it move. Because if they all left, it's
be
like
a problem. And
it
I'm
would,
trying to make sure that they don't. And
right?
they don't
Yeah.
want to. I mean, it's a terrific market, but it's also New York is a extraordinarily difficult place to do business. We have a very stifling regulatory environment, and despite the constant call for more taxes, we actually have the heaviest tax burden per capita in the country, more than California. If you took, the amount of revenue generated off of each individual in the state, including federal taxes, state taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, gas tax, you name it, it's significantly higher than every other state. So it's not an easy place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How fun is your job, right?
I always tell people my job is a little bit like banging your head against the wall every day, and once in a while you feel something move. You don't know if it's your head or the wall.
That's
It's, but I think there's a lot of recognition of the importance of business to the economy. And without
Yes.
private sector, you don't have any of the goods and services that are provided via the public sector. You don't have public education and healthcare and transportation and all those good things. So you need a robust public sector to make a place where people want to live and work and be able to thrive. So my
Yeah.
job is it's pretty hard. I like it though. I like the challenge, and I am at my heart, I'm an advocate. I like advocating for sometimes the unpopular. I was a public defender, the chief public defender of Rensselaer County earlier in my career, and I loved that role too because I was advocating for people who weren't necessarily in the best place that they've been in their lives. So I think in some respects that's like sort of my core that
Yeah.
I like to be an advocate. I like to try and speak on behalf of um, individuals or companies.
I think that's amazing. You've just in going through some of your history, I know that you are heavily involved in working for tax relief. You're heavily involved in making sure that childcare is available. You're a big one for labor and workforce development and safety along those lines as well. You've even been involved in prison reform um, and now corporate governance is your focus. What I want to do is I didn't actually realize that you were a public defender. So I want to wind the clock back all the way to usually I don't go this far back, but for you, you weren't born in the United States,
No,
right? So we're gonna wind the clock all the way back to there's a there's a baby that's joined us from Tunisia.
Tunisia, yes. My parents were in the Peace Corps, and I think, one of maybe the first 100 babies born in the Peace Corps. So you can tell I'm old, but it was relatively shortly after the Peace Corps was formed, and yeah, so I was born in Tunisia and lived there, I think, until I was somewhere around 2 or a little bit less than 2 years old. But I did get to go back when I graduated from high school. I spent almost an entire summer checking out the country, and it was an interesting time to be there because it was very free and a very open country at the time. But things have changed a lot. It's become I would say much more limiting in terms of like I could walk around when I was 16. I could walk around in shorts and a tank top and it was no big deal. But I think that's not really the case anymore.
Mm.
It's become a much more restrictive society. I'd love to go back though.
So, how old were you when you came to Syracuse?
I think, not long after. So probably less than 3, somewhere
Okay.
under the age of 3. My sister was born in Syracuse and she is uh, just under 3 years younger than me. So
Okay.
that's my retracing. Um,
Awesome.
but again, I was always my mom is a retired French teacher, and she made sure that I knew a lot about Tunisia growing up because I was born there, and then again helped arrange for me to spend almost an entire summer there after I graduated from high school. So it was nice. It's,
Amazing.
it's definitely part of who I am.
So let's talk about high school because you kind of whipped through it and you got out of it when you were 16. This is
Well, you would too if both your parents taught there. Um, No, you don't really want to stick around, spend all day as a teenager with mom and dad. No, no, I mean, all joking aside, I skipped 7th grade, I think. Partially. When I was in 6th grade, I took classes at the middle school and then went straight into 8th grade. So I missed American history, believe it or not. That was like the big class that I didn't get to take. So sometimes, I'll read something, or later in college, I'll be studying something about American history, and it's all fresh and new to me. So
That's good because I think what we were taught in grade school is fiction, a lot of it,
Yeah, well, some of it, yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah,
A
so I
lot
don't
of
have those
a lot of our
misconceptions.
yes,
I'm not burdened with them. I
that's
also
right.
was raised with the belief that because I was not born in the United States, I could not be president of the United States. So that was a real, load off. Like takes all the pressure off.
Phew.
Yeah. Woo. Take that off my list.
Cool. So this is interesting. You went through, I've got kind of the research I've done, right? So I wanted to just wander through some of it with you. You did go to law school in Albany,
Yeah.
um, and you got your JD when you were in your early 20s.
Yep. I
Um,
started when I was 20, graduated when I was 23.
Amazing. Amazing. So all of that laid the foundation for where you are. What part, like you told me privately, and this doesn't show up in the publicly available information about you. You told me that you had started down the veterinary path.
Yeah. My entire life, as a kid, I was sort of the stereotypical horse crazy kid. I collected Breyer's horse models. I watched All Creatures Great and Small on PBS. Weird little factoid. My mom was very down on television, said actually, I quote her to say it melts your brain. But for some reason, I was allowed to watch unlimited PBS. So I saw all creatures great and small, and wanted to be a large animal vet really from the time I was probably like 7 or 8 years old all the way up till I got to college. And that was my sole purpose in life was I am going to grow up and become a veterinarian.
How how did you move from vet to law?
Yeah, that's it's funny. My high school, one of my best friends in high school, her mom was always saying, "You like to argue too much. You should be a lawyer." It was just a joke. It was always a joke to me. So when I was in college, I had a number of interesting events happen. The big one being my stepfather, my after my freshman year of college, which is kind of my sophomore year because I had come in with a bunch of credits. Um, he had a very, very major coronary event in Europe that summer. And so I was supposed to drive down to the University of North Carolina, actually fly down to the University of North Carolina or catch a ride down there and start my next year at Chapel Hill. But he was stuck in Belgium in a hospital. So I made an executive decision to demand my tuition money back. I drove down, I got my things, and I stopped at SUNY Binghamton on my way back and said, I need you to accept my transfer here. You accepted me out of high school. I didn't pick you, sorry. But my older siblings had all gone there. So I was very familiar with it. And it was only an hour away from Syracuse. And I didn't know the degree to which my mom was going to need help. And I was just worried that I would be too far away if he came back in bad shape. And believe it or not, I mean, I sat outside the dean of admissions office for probably a couple of hours and they agreed to see me and they took me in. They admitted me on the spot and I had to go register for classes with, no declared major. I basically had to sign up for what was available, and there was no line at the political science table, and there was no, no line at the geography table. So my whole first semester at Binghamton was essentially geography and political science classes, and I ended up loving the poli sci classes. So, um, I mean, complete random thing, but sometimes you have to just go with where your heart is. And at that point, I knew that I wasn't loving, the college level chemistry classes. When
This
I
is
say wasn't
so
loving,
good.
I would say did really poorly my freshman chem class.
I'm going to confess the same that, I was looking at psychiatry versus psychology and got to OChem and I'm like, Oh no.
Oh no, right? Yeah.
I understand. It's interesting because these days I understand more than I did back then. So who knows? That said, I think one of the key points that seems to be a theme for successful and happy people is is that they made choices, true decisions that were based from the heart. Like you chose to do this school because it was family, it was kind of a bridge to family. And so it was your heart brought you there. And then opportunity, like this door of opportunity opened up and you were like, whatever, I'll just do it. And then you went, oh my gosh, I love this.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I'm bringing this up and I'm underscoring it specifically because I think we tend to see it as a distraction instead of an opportunity. And we in general, even deep into our careers, we need to be open to, oh, here's a door that might be worth opening and looking into. Oh, like
Yeah.
everything I've done has led me to this point. What's next? And I love that kind of curious place that actually does create this leapfrog. Like, wow, look where I got to. I wouldn't have been there if I hadn't done this, right? So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that you mentioned that because I can think of other examples where it was really deciding to take a chance to do something that I didn't know if I was going to like it or not, and it wasn't necessarily the first thing on my radar. And it turned out to be something I really loved. I went when I was at Binghamton, I took an internship in the assembly, which is a one semester. You live in Albany, you work in the legislature, and it was in my mind it was a chance to live with my boyfriend who was at Syracuse University at the time and had gotten the internship, and I thought, oh well, this will be fun. We'll get to live together for a semester and see how that goes. And I loved working in the assembly. There is something very addictive about working in the middle of politics during a legislative session. And it was that eventually led to me going to law school. That and a boss, really great assemblyman. The second person I worked for in Albany, a guy named Greg Young, who passed away a number of years ago, was an amazing guy. He was an attorney, and he said, "Well, why don't you want to go to law school? Or, why don't you go to law school?" And I said, "Well, I'm not smart enough to go to law school. I'm not, this. I feel like those are for people, really serious people." And so he starts ticking off all these people who work in the legislature who are attorneys, and I was like, "Oh, really? Okay, all right, maybe I could go." I had in my mind, I don't know, um, something very old-fashioned idea about who were lawyers, and it
Who
turned
were
out
lawyers and who were assembly people, right? And
right.
it's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And it was great, and I realized that I could actually, if I stayed in Albany, I could probably get summer work in the legislature. That's how I ended up there. And again, it was kind of that and my stepfather telling me that I had to go to grad school, that there has to be a next step. You can't just spend the rest of your life working in the assembly. So
It's like, don't just waste your life in politics.
well,
It's so
right.
funny. It's
Which
so
the
funny.
funniest thing is my parents were both super active in Syracuse politics, liberal party politics, which I don't even think there's really a liberal party anymore. I guess now they're the progressives, but so that's the household I grew up in. We had home delivery of the Village Voice in Syracuse, New York, which I had no idea wasn't, kind of something everybody got. Um, and I used to, enjoy the very, very racy classified ads in the back of it when I was a teenager. So, it It's
It's,
just
you
a
know, there's some,
different, it's funny, you don't know how different other people's lives are until you
right?
grow up, you know?
Well, that's right. And even I think you see it in your role, like there is this sort of without it being ego as in uh kind of this personal self-inflation, the ego being the self, right? Self-centered. There is a self-centered, an egocentric nature to a lot of people. And I mean, you've traveled a bit and like to see how myopic we are in general as Americans, that we believe that our small world is the way the rest of the world operates. And it's really like you've had the experience of going, yeah, there's more. There's more, and we need to be opening too much more, being like we need to become aware of so much more.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're very siloed, both geographically, but also politically, and I would say economically too. Having worked, with people who couldn't afford an attorney, right? And public defender's
Right.
office is for people who can't afford to hire their own attorney. And you see that there's been, there are radical differences in how the justice system treats people who come from resources or who have resources or connections and those who don't. And I just have this sort of like 8-year-old sense of fair. It should be the same rules for everybody, right? But then also you see all the dissatisfaction that you see with this country and the way that the economic system is set up. But I will tell you, having been in other places, the opportunity here is far greater than it is anywhere else. And
Yeah.
if you haven't gone outside of the country and seen it with your own eyes, you would not be aware. You hear all the negatives, like that we have and I'm not saying that there aren't a lot of people who struggle here, but the poverty in the US versus the poverty in, say, the slums of Cape Town, radically different in terms of governmental supports and resources and adequacy of shelter and all of those things. So I think we all need to step outside of our silos, whether it's, going visiting outside of the US, getting outside of your own neighborhood, or talking to people you don't agree with. And I think talking to people you don't agree with is one of the things we are doing less and less of. And I think that's really, really a shame.
I agree with you. Yeah, the common struggle, like what brings people together is to fight a common enemy, right? What brings people together very often is to fight a common enemy.
Yeah.
And um right now we don't know what that is or who that is. And so yeah, there's a lot of internal discord.
You know you are bigger than the life you are leading. It really is time to attend to that thing you've wanted to do or have, but you've been putting off. It's time to step into that dream you've parked for someday. It's time to claim true well-being, both personally and professionally, without giving up the success that got you here. It's time to check out Dr. Pernell's signature small group retreat, the Exponential Success Summit. Explore exponentialsuccesssummit.com. Seats are extremely limited as this is a very special small group event. www.exponentialsuccesssummit.com.
Being able to have a conversation does bring people together as well. Like I will read and listen to um, journalism from all sides, and it's striking how one-sided each of the all sides is. It's like unbelievable. Wow. Right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so open. I guess all of this up to this point is open. open to so much more. It's like pay attention to what's beyond just your little community. Um, so wow,
Well, I think
your
also,
journey.
I mean, I have to say, I think also the way that we receive information now in these sort of very small little clips,
Yes.
um, you hear that someone maybe said something that you don't agree with. And if you don't get the context or the explanation or have any idea of how they have come to this conclusion, you might not understand how they came to that conclusion, that there is
Yes.
more to just the 10 seconds that you saw on YouTube or on, I'm gonna date myself, like
Yeah.
on I was gonna say Instagram. I don't even know if it's a thing anymore. I think it is. It's
It's a thing. Instagram's
okay.
a thing. Yeah.
But that's the thing. If you only watch something for 30 seconds, you don't have the full picture. And if someone is on the team that you don't root for, um, you don't know anything about them, right? You don't, all you know is that they're on this team. It doesn't mean that they agree with every aspect of, say, if it's a political party, it doesn't mean that they agree with everything that the head of the political party says. I mean, that's the danger in it, is we start just painting people into their own
Yes.
corners and not recognizing that there's a lot more complexity towards how people arrive at the views that they do.
Yeah. I have two rules for myself, and I would, love it if everybody took these on. One is I I don't paint any group with a broad brush, right? So, oh, these people, the Republicans, the Democrats, the whatever. It's like it's not all of a particular group. So it's like these people within this group, they happen to be affiliated, they have this opinion.
Right.
That's the first thing, is I don't paint anybody with a broad brush. Second is if I feel triggered by something, my instant response, and this is trained, like I had to really practice this. If I feel triggered, my question to myself is, huh, I wonder what the rest of the story is.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's how we all should be. It's hard to do because
It
a
is
lot
hard
of
to do.
things, the things that trigger you are they're hitting an emotional nerve somehow, right? But I have to, I do it's a political roundtable, which is um, it's a conversation that is usually a couple hours on the radio. It's public radio locally, and it's extremely, extremely left leaning.
Mm,
And I was raised in a very liberal environment, but I also am an advocate for business, fiscal conservatism. I mean, social, do whatever you want pretty much as long as you're not hurting anybody. But on the fiscal side, I mean, I think we have to be responsible with taxpayer dollars. People have put this money into the system. We need to act responsibly, and we need to set up a policy framework that encourages natural growth, not penalizes growth. And so, I mean, there's a lot that I could say about that. But my point is, I'm not a conservative person, but on this show, I definitely am one of the more conservative voices. And sometimes, you know, uh, there's a lot of rhetoric around certain elected officials, certain parties, and I cringe. And sometimes I'll say something like, I don't think that's fair. I think that you need to lay things out in a way that's a little bit less I don't know, maybe less provocative or less polarizing.
hmm
But partisanship, for the sake of being partisan, is something that has always bothered me, because I've known people in both parties who are amazing public servants, amazing voices for the people who elected them. And
Agreed.
I've known people in both parties who were not those things. So,
Agreed. Yep.
so
Yeah.
there's no ownership of the negatives or the positives in either
And
party.
that's why not to paint a everybody who is a XYZ as a particular thing. It's like I happen
Yeah.
to be a member of this party. Okay. It's sort of like rooting for your favorite sports team. and anybody who's not your team must be bad. It's like, well,
Well, that is true. The Bills are the only team worth rooting for, in my
okay,
opinion. Okay.
okay,
But yeah, I have some flaws. You've found one of my biggest flaws, which is I am a very, very loyal Bills fan.
okay.
And I will root for the Bills or anyone who might beat the Bills in the playoffs to lose.
I got you. Okay. Well, I am rare, I think, in that I will watch sports for the sake of seeing the good plays. And
Oh,
it's
you
sort
must
of
have a
like
fantasy team then.
I just it's like, wow, these guys look at that play, and people around me are like, grr, grr, like, yeah, but did you see how great it was? Grr. It's like, right? So again, it's sort of like I look at the people and not the, oh, if it's this team or this party, they must be the best or the worst or whatever. Um, you've been with the council for 17 years at this point, is that right? Something like that? 18 years, something.
I think 18 years next week.
Congratulations. That's amazing. You started in government affairs. You started as the
I
VP of
did. I
government
was
affairs.
hired to run government affairs by my predecessor, and actually was asked by a former elected official if I would interview for the job. I wasn't looking to leave the position I was in, and then when I came to interview for the job and talked to the then CEO, I was very candid with what I thought needed to be done as far as government affairs. And he said, okay, well, you can do all those things. And I thought, oh, wow, this is okay. I mean, I guess it was one of those things where I thought, well, I'll go because I was asked to go interview. But because of the fact that I didn't have necessarily, I wasn't thinking, well, I really want this job.
Yeah.
I just kind of was very candid with him. And as soon as he said, yeah, you can do that. I thought, well, that's an interesting opportunity then, because I was working for
Yeah.
a lobbying firm, and your portfolio is limited to who your clients are. And coming from the
Right.
state senate, where I'd worked on budget for a number of years, where I had a very broad portfolio, that kind of the limited number of issues, it was it was fine. But once you learn them, you know them, and then what? Then it's like
Yeah.
you're basically pitching the same case over and over again until you win, and then you come up with the next thing, versus the business council, which is a broader policy oriented. Let's improve the business climate, let's create a more robust economy, more inclusive economy, and that could be a lot of things, right? We touch on virtually every sector. There's very few issue areas that are not somehow something that we work on. So, there's obvious ones, there's tax and economic development, but then there's also workforce development and environmental issues and transportation, infrastructure. I mean, you name it, anything that government does.
Yeah.
We probably have somebody who's working in that area, so we do some advocacy there.
It's amazing. What are some of the coming challenges, like the next year or two? I know that AI is going to be a big deal. It is
Yep.
for everybody. I try not to make it a trigger place because so many people are like, AI is coming to take our jobs. It's like AI is going to transform the way we do our jobs, right?
It is. I
um,
mean, any great advancement, and I know there are folks who say, well, it's not an advancement, but it is. Machine learning and artificial intelligence it's an incredible tool
yeah,
that will transform how we do things. But we also have demographic issues that it will help us with, right? So when you see the working age population, and then you look beyond that at the birth rate and all of those things, if everything were to stay the same without technology and automation and AI, we would start losing GDP eventually because there's not enough people to do the jobs. And, that's only compounded by immigration, but this sort of the problem of a shrinking workforce is not limited to the US. In fact, it's worse in some European countries. So we need AI and we need automation in order to maintain productivity. So that, I mean, it is happening at a time when we need it to work, and there's going to be pitfalls and there's going to be challenges. I mean, I don't know if the first automobile had brakes, but somebody figured out that you needed brakes because it's not hitched to a horse that you can just slow down, right? So, I think you have to figure things out as you go, but also accept the efficiency and the value that gets created by technological advances. So, it's not good or bad. We need to figure it out, and we need to do it in a way that we don't stifle it, that we don't
Right.
limit
Right.
what can be done with it, but also that it can't be so free, so much of a free for all that it can be used for exploitation or for bad.
So what
Um,
else are you seeing? Like besides AI, right? So
yeah.
it's
I
it's
mean,
coming, right? But
yeah.
and what else are you seeing?
Well, I mean, so New York specific, because the country is kind of headed in different directions on the issue of local and regional economies and the policies around economies. I mean, certainly in New York, with newly elected Democratic Socialist mayor, there's a lot of noise around, tax the wealthy. We need to tax them more, as if we don't already tax them more than everybody else in New York. I mean, we have the most progressive tax code in the country. We have literally like 1% of the taxpayers pay like almost 50% of the personal income tax that is generated, and those are the high income earners. So, the sort of idea that we need to spend more and we need to make New York more affordable by taxing more, there's not a level of awareness that there are economic consequences to that we are already feeling. I mean, we've already lost headquarters of Fortune 500 companies that represent, something like $1 trillion in overall revenue, not to the state, but I mean overall. But the
Yeah.
moving of headquarters is significant because that's where the high-paying jobs in those companies are. And if they move their headquarters out of state, we're losing all of those highly paid positions, and we're losing the revenue that goes with it. And there are states that are going in the complete opposite direction. They're trying to deregulate, and maybe some would argue making things less safe or more haphazard, but they're also cutting taxes, doing things to aggressively try and recruit high income earners. And at the end of the day, they're going to end up with a bigger population and more clout at the federal level. And that's going to harm New York, which, at one point in time, I think something like, I don't know. Now I'm so bad with numbers, but something like 6 out of 10 U.S. citizens lived in New York State, and we're now maybe 1 out of 10. So it's not a good thing, right? You need to have your population growing, and there are people who would debate this with me, I suppose, but in order to have a robust downtown area and thriving restaurants and cool places that people go, you need people going there. And so, at the most fundamental level, people want to live in places where things are happening. And if there's not enough people around, we all saw this during the pandemic. Restaurants close, stores close, and it's just not as attractive a place to live.
Yeah.
And it's not just climate. I mean, we're in the middle of a mini snow squall here right now, but there are states that are growing that have climate that is arguably much, much less friendly than New York's.
What throughout all of the twists and turns in your history, what has been the biggest leadership challenge that you've learned from?
Hmm. Ooh, well, so I don't know if this is an example that fits necessarily, but when my predecessor left, to join the administration, the state's the governor's administration at the time. It was, somewhat of it was a surprise. And uh, I was designated as the acting CEO while a search was conducted for a new CEO. And initially, I thought, I hope it's someone good. Like it didn't occur to me that I would apply for the actual CEO position because I like government affairs, I like advocacy, and I was up to that point kind of used to being an advisor to someone who actually made the decisions, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I would advise ardently, and try and get my way. But I ultimately had the safety of not being the one who made the decision, so that if it was wrong, okay, well, I told you so, or oh, I was wrong, sorry about that. Um, but it just I didn't think I wanted the position, and I pretty quickly realized after doing the acting position for a short period of time that hey, I actually really like it. And more than anything, I really like the public speaking component of it. And if you had told me that in college, where I would, have a heart attack if a professor called on me, which happens in law school more than in undergraduate. But
Hmm.
um, it was a complete surprise to me, but I was forced into it. Like I had to be the spokesperson for a period of time, and I had to run events and be the host, rather than having the luxury of being able to only stick to my issue areas and give advice on the rest. So, but that was, I mean, it was a mistake to not put my name in at the beginning. And part of that is, on my part, probably a bit of a lack of confidence that I was able to do the job. But, I did get a second bite at the apple. So I was able to go back and say, I would like to be considered. And, ultimately here I am. It was a long process, but I got here. So,
Oh,
but
that's a
I
good
mean,
one.
I think for any leader, the hardest thing is to recognize if things are not going in the right direction. Excuse me. If you see the culture in your workplace is something where suddenly people are looking, or they are maybe not wanting, or they want to work remote more, they don't want to come in the office, you have to figure that out, and you have to recognize that it can't just be all your own ideas to solve it. You have to ask people, you have to get input, and you have to give them the space to disagree with you. And we've had um, very limited turnover here. I'm really happy to say, and I think it was a really challenging place to work during the pandemic, because when a lot of people had not much to do, we had everything to do. We had to we had to work with the governor's office every day on what's essential, what's not essential, how do we structure the shutdown rules, how do we, and don't forget there was 25% of the people could be in the office for a period of time, and then it was 10%, and then it was no percent. And we were the hub of information for how to deal with COVID sick leave and all that stuff. So our hair was on fire for a year and a half. And I recognized and got input from my staff about how do we make sure that people don't get burned out,
Hmm.
and that we remain a place where people want to stay. And I've got one person here who's been here for 43 years. And he's amazing, and he's going to retire eventually, and it's going to be a huge loss to us. But he's engaged every day, rolls up his sleeves, likes coming to work, and um, that's what you want. You want to build a place where people have the ability uh, to speak their minds, and if there's a problem, you could be able to nip it in the bud early. And it's
Yeah,
hard to do.
it is hard to do. You mentioned a few things that I want to bring up as great leadership points. One is simply listening, and you do that by asking. And one of my rules for leaders who don't often think this far ahead in terms of asking, don't ask a question that you don't want the answer to,
Yeah.
right? And early in my management, I asked in my management career, I asked my team, certain things. What would they like? What would they like to see? And the answers were things that there was no way I could deliver on. So it's like give it context, let them know that, what you're interested in and what you can and can't do. And then ask and then listen. Um, I was also reflecting on the pandemic in New York, and I'm in New York pretty much 25% of my time these days. And the best part of the pandemic in New York for me, no traffic. Oh my
Oh
gosh.
yeah. Yeah,
Right?
well,
Because I was in Manhattan, right? And it's like, wow, I can actually get through town without a problem. Uh, Crazy.
well, no one wants you to drive in New York.
No.
It's, congestion pricing and subways and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But sometimes you got to drive. That's
Yeah.
just how it is.
Yeah, so I don't actually have a car in New York. I do either Uber or taxi, or more often than not, I learned how to use the subway system, and it's excellent.
Yeah.
Um, and for
I take the subway
290
all the time. I love it.
for
There's,
$2.90 you can get anywhere, right?
yeah,
And I think in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is where I'm based most of my time, it is like public transit is based on, well, you went from this stop to that stop, and so that costs
right.
this much. It's
It's like
like
tolls.
it is. I
Yeah.
love that you can get on the subway, and if you go one stop, it's $2.90, and if you go 14 stops, it's still $2.90. And I love that idea because I think it encourages people to use the subway,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Mhm.
I mean, the thing is you need people to use the subway, right? If people stop using the subway, then the subway financially doesn't work. You can't repair it, you can't maintain it, and you end up, you know, in somewhat of the position. I mean, the MTA is in, tough financial shape. A lot of it because of the remote work,
Yeah.
and, people not needing to use the subway. So it creates financial ripple effect that needs to be solved because and I personally, I hope everyone has flexibility to work from home when they have a cold or something, but for the most part, will come into the office because I think that human interaction, you end up being way more productive. And we all need that social piece.
Yes. Yes. And that's the balance to AI again, is there's a humanity that we need to keep. Um, are you good at chess? Do you-
No,
no, really?
I like
Because
the idea of chess,
yeah,
but this is an area where I, I just I'm a little too impulsive. So my
that's
my
really
son
interesting.
Trey and I played quite a bit for a while, and he would just destroy me. So you'd think I should be better at Scrabble.
You're better at Scrabble.
Yeah,
Words.
yeah,
Okay. And the reason I ask, obviously, is that as you're describing economic ripple effects, you are thinking 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of, if we do this,
yeah,
right? It's a syllogistic tree. If this, then that, and if this, then that, and if that, then that, and that's either good or bad. So, um, and then the ripples from there, like one action doesn't just affect one thing.
yeah.
It's
You think,
great.
I mean, I think if I played a little bit more, I might get good at it. But if you are, the last probably 20 games I played, I got dispatched with pretty readily. And so that, takes the
All right.
fun out of it.
It does. It does. It's got to be a challenge. Scrabble it is. Awesome. All right. Anything that we didn't cover that you were thinking we would or hoping we would?
No, this has been a lot of fun. We kind of went places where I didn't think we would, so it was good.
It's what I love to do, is to go places where it's sort of like, oh, it's not just a it's what I call an interrogation interview. I have this question. Now you answer the next question. No, the next question. It's so serious. I like having conversations, and
Yeah,
I always like having conversations with you. So
same
cool.
here. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, with that, we will wind up this particular episode. This is One Sharp Sword. Heather Mulligan, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
All righty. Heather Mulligan has been my guest on One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. Heather is the CEO and president of the New York State Business Council. I am Wayne Pernell, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Pernell, your host, guide, and coach on this journey. And we will see you again next time. Thanks for joining us.